if you run a business that is intuitive, values driven, but it's also very real in terms of money, decisions, and showing up consistently online. Today's conversation is one that I know a lot of you have been craving. I am joined by KC Steinbeck. He is a creator who does so many different things: tarot reader, astrologer, intuitive, but also business owner. And this conversation is so grounded and honest. And it's really fun for me to talk to a business owner who is also spiritual. We talk about the difference between intuition and anxiety, how to know when to follow a nudge versus stay the course in business, and what it actually looks like to run a business through different seasons of growth. We also get insight into what Casey is navigating in his own business right now, the tension between visibility and rest that I think every single business owner goes through, especially when you're showing up online. And we talk about how to approach the rest of 2026 without fear, pressure, or the constant sense that you're behind, right? That you're not doing something right. And we talk about how to navigate that. This is not a conversation about predicting the future or bypassing hard work. It's really about discernment, self-trust, and learning, how to listen to yourself while still leading a business in the real world, whether it's spiritual or not. So let's get into it. Welcome to Confessions of a Spiritual Entrepreneur. I'm Samantha Fackler, your host, business mentor, brand strategist, and someone who believes that building a business is one of the most spiritual journeys you can take. I am here to help you grow your business through proven strategies and aligned practices, so ultimately you can make more money while being in a state of ease. Casey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited, but now I'm nervous now that we're recording.
No
It's an
worries.
honor to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here. And there's so much to talk about. I think, initially I was so drawn to your energy and what you share on your platform. You do so many different things, but could you let our audience know, what are the main things that you're sharing with the world today?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I come from a place of just being completely authentic. My journey with social media was very unexpected. I started as a creator solely in the music world. That was what I thought I was here for. That's what I thought that my path was. That was my only vision, my only purpose, my only angle. And then after a lot of burnout, a lot of failure, I say in air quotes, things just not really working out for me in that industry, I fell away and I reconnected with my spiritual side, which has been a huge component of my entire life. I've always been into energetics, into tarot, into astrology for over 20 years. It's just been a part of me, but I always hid that side of me. So I just started showing up, being completely vulnerable, posting content that no one really expected from me because no one knew that I had a TikTok at the time. So it was kind of my secret life. And I was sharing downloads, intuitive messages. And I just came from this place of, I need this right now. I'm receiving this information. And if I need this, maybe someone else out there will relate. And I've often felt, especially in the last 3 years, where we're going as a collective with spiritual work and social media, it's all changing. So I just came from this place of no strategy, no box or niche to put myself in. And this is just me. This is who I am. All of these parts of me are what I do and what I love. And I'm just going to share them all. And now we're here. So it's kind of hard to explain what I do because everything is always changing, but I feel like all these different pieces of me are parts of the work that I do. And so it's hard to say whether or not I'm a content creator or a business owner or all of the above, but really the entirety of it is all at the core of me. So I just try to show up and be myself. The only person I can be is me, so I might as well just be that to the best of my ability.
Completely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think, if you are unfamiliar with Casey's work, definitely check him out. You tend to share a lot of messages that come through different numerology, tarot, definitely astrology. That was something that we first connected on when we jumped on before we hit record. You're an Aquarius. We both have an Aries moon, and you have
Yes.
this really interesting blend in your astrology chart. But there's also so much more. And I want to dig into one of those moments where you were like, I think I need to bring my spiritual side out publicly. And just what was one snapshot moment that happened in that phase?
That's a really good question. I think for me, I just never expected any of this to become what it is now. I never thought about like making content full time, or making content that would reach the masses in the way that I do. I always thought it had to come from one container, one channel, like just music, and that's all it was about. So when I started making spiritual content, I kind of just did it because it was fulfilling. And I found a lot of healing and a reconnection to myself by immersing myself back into astrology and tarot and using it as a modality, not to like predict the future, but to just like understand myself and to understand like areas of myself that I needed to maybe work on or heal or overcome, especially with the fear of being seen, which was like the overriding energy that kind of stunted my music career. And so I could never show up and share my art authentically. I always had that just really unregulated nervous feeling. And I feel like people can totally feel it through the screen, even if they don't know you. So I just kind of showed up naturally sharing these messages, and it felt like the armor was removed. And I kept following that. And the more I did it, the more I felt like I was growing. And then one day I just had a video randomly go viral on TikTok. It gained like 4 million views. And like overnight, everything changed. My account was monetized. And I just like shifted into this like brand new arc of my journey, and now I'm here. So I've just been building on that, but it definitely changes. It's even changed this year. It's always changing, I guess. Like the change is never going away. But yeah, that's kind of the one moment that just sparked it all, and then I was like, holy crap, like here we are, like I just never thought that anyone would resonate with that. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating to me when that happens after you take the armor off, because I think taking the armor off is the hardest thing. Often we
Yeah.
think we're doing it, but it's like, wait, how is it still there?
And like so many of us come from a place of like trying to show up, especially online, like with this like with the armor, with the facade that we're perfect, or like everything is curated in the right way. It was edited the right way. It was, the algorithm was all perfectly adhered to. And I have not had an approach like that to anything I've done with my work. I just show up and kind of let my energy be the thing that takes me. And I don't know if that's like strategically the right thing, but it hasn't failed me. So I follow my intuition pretty heavily with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I keep getting the sense that we're moving into an era where we're going to have to follow that, because how do you have a strategy when things are developing so fast? Like we're in an age
Yeah.
of AI that's never existed before. So it's very difficult to have a strategy if you don't know what this game is like, right? So I feel like
Yeah.
that's becoming more of the MO.
Absolutely. And something that I think about a lot is the direction that like with AI, especially because it is so relevant now and we're seeing so much of it every day. I feel like there's a huge shift in, I don't want to say like the power dynamic, but just the structure of fame, of connection, especially on social media. And we're seeing more independent kind of, they're either spiritual or they're business owners, or they're kind of multifaceted types of individuals or creators that are really rising in prominence because they're not in this template of niches, algorithms, AI. Everything is coming from an organic place. And it's just people being people, right? Being real, being who they are without the armor showing up. And that's what I feel like we really need right now too. And so I've definitely noticed a shift in my content and even this year and where things are going. And I see a lot of other really great creators who are just doing their thing, being themselves. And I really feel like that's the next phase and chapter of industry for us. So we'll see. I feel like Pluto and Aquarius to be in the astrology realm, it's definitely going to be a long haul. It's a 20-year journey and chapter for this shift, but it's definitely going to be something I think we see a lot of.
Completely. And I want to dig into this authenticity piece because it was one of the first words you used, and I feel like it just jumped out. It's been a huge
Yeah.
theme on this podcast and my work that I see with clients, because we often think we are being authentic. We think we're being ourselves. And then yet there are these subconscious layers that come online when we are in front of a microphone or a camera. So, how do you advise people to try and shed that so they can stay themselves wherever they're showing up?
When it comes to channeling the authenticity and showing up, as yourself organically, it typically is on the exact other side of what you think you should be doing or what you think you knew. And there's always this head versus heart or head versus intuition thing where the intellectual mind is trying to tell you, be this way, study all these other people and try to take the tactics and integrate them into your own approach, which can work. But at the same time, is it natural? Is it you? I know when I try to follow what other people are doing, it just, the way I feel when I show up, it doesn't, even if I'm trying to convince myself that I'm being true to my own energy, my own content, my own story, there's like this resistance. There's just like this pressure that builds. And some people live in the fake it till you make it law of assumption kind of world where they're like, just do it and force yourself to. And I truly don't think we can lie to ourselves when it comes to how we show up. So you either know you're being real or you're performing. And so for me, when I come from an area of obligation, like I have to make a post today or I have to channel something today, that's typically my sign we're forcing this. Like we're not coming from a place where we're totally in flow. We might be able to reach something and pull a message that lands, but it may not be as gravital as the thing that comes when I'm just in the motion of my day and the inspiration comes out of the blue instead of trying to sit down and be like, here's a message, right? Like here's something to force into the masses. It's more fluid. It's less I have to and more like, oh, this is coming to me.
Yeah, and I think that opens up this whole question that I've been thinking about too, because I tap into my intuition with clients. And often when I'm
Hmm.
having a session, different things will come through. But when creating content, when showing up online, it's like, how do we stay in flow and let things come through us and feel inspired and authentic? But then what happens when that dries up? Like, how do we kind of create inspiration for ourselves or create conditions for our intuition to naturally turn on? And I'm curious if you have any daily or recurring practices that help you tap into that inspiration and intuition.
Yeah, and that's also such a great question too, because and especially for any sort of spiritual creator or business owner, there's gonna be that period where you hit the wall a little bit and you're like, I need to refill my cup. I need to re-inspire myself with the direction I'm taking. I blame all of my Aquarius energy. I get into the rhythm and I love to go and go and go and go and run the machine into the ground. But then I reach this point where I'm not unsatisfied, but I'm kind of bored with what I'm doing and I need the change. So the only way to really get into that is to break the cycle and kind of disrupt the rhythm, like get myself outside of the four walls, immerse myself in being present as well. We spend so much time thinking about what's next, what do we have to build, how do we do it, where are we going, and we forget the only moment we have is this one. And so sometimes it's just about pulling yourself back into the present moment and thinking less about what's next. This is going to be like really weird advice, but I tell this to my clients. Sometimes when we're trying to figure out what's next or how to get there, what to do, what strategy or move to make next, the best way to find the answer is to not think about it at all. And when I tell people that, there's normally this moment where they're like, what do you mean don't do anything? You can feel them gasp. But seriously, like sometimes when you're trying to force it, it's not the time. It's like trying to force, if you're a creative person, any kind of art, sometimes you're just not inspired and that's okay. You can rest and there's nothing wrong with that.
Completely. Yeah, I have a small team and I have a social media manager, and she'll tell me, like, okay, we need you to sit down and film this stuff. And when I sit down to film it, if I'm not feeling it, it comes out terrible.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When I have to do something, when there's like that have to part hanging on it, I don't know if it's because I love to be so free and rebellious and independent, but once I'm forced to do something, I'm just like eye rolling the whole time and it just never comes out the way it does when it hits me and I'm in my car driving and I'm just in the zone and then I get the download and I pull over and I make the video and then it does way better than what I was sitting there forced to do, for lack of a better word. I
Yeah,
say
it's
forced,
like,
but it's not really.
but it feels like you're being forced in a
Yeah,
way, you know?
it
You're
feels
like,
like work.
it feels like work. And then you're like,
Yeah,
oh, this is absolute trash. I can't use this.
yeah.
But
And
you're
and I think
right.
too with that, if you have to do it and it has to get done, it can definitely feel like a chore. And you're like, oh, it definitely isn't as inspired and the energy isn't as high. But there's something to still take away from in that too. It still builds momentum and structure, which a lot of people appreciate, especially viewers and people that support your content. They want the video that's at 5 p.m. or something on Monday, right? When they expect that, that's good for them. So there is, it may not always feel good for us, but it also does good in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's this honestly ageless debate of like structure versus inspiration. And you can look at any artist of any medium and they struggle with this. It's something that I don't think there's a perfect answer, but we all kind of have to dance around and figure out what that balance looks like for us.
And knowing when the cycle or the rhythm in that project and that type of content or whatever it is that you're putting out there, when it's time to pivot and move into the next thing too. Because I think for me, something I learned this year is we can kind of beat the dead horse and continue doing the same thing, and then it gets monotonous. And then what I mentioned earlier, I lead up into that moment where I need a different change of pace or a different type of content to immerse myself into creating. So understanding when the cycle has kind of come to a close or when the season shifts and it's time to maybe reflect, pause, hit the brakes, and just reevaluate. And that can be a really scary thing. I think when you're so connected, for me, I love putting out content so much and I love connecting with my audience. But then I also have to remind myself, what do I want? What do I need? What do I want to share? Instead of just showing up and running the same cycle over and over again.
Seasonal shifts are so huge in business, right? Sometimes we're in launch mode and we have a ton of things. I know you just came out with a membership that you announced yesterday, and those phases require so much energy. And then what I find is like it's a wave, and then often it dissipates, and then we're in more of a rest season. I'm curious, where are you at in business right now?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just released a membership finally. It's been like a year in the works. And pretty much what happened was at the end of 2024, I went from a handful of personal reading clients. Never really thought I would start a business doing personal readings. I used to not even do readings for my friends. It was only the closest people to me I would do a reading for, or maybe myself. So it was hard for me to share that side of my life and let alone do it as a business. There was a lot of shame or guilt and question, overthinking all the things. And a lot of people were requesting one-on-one readings. And so I kind of had a handful of people I would meet with or one-offs that I would do. And then in 2.5 months, I went from the handful into over 1,000 personal readings done. And great. It was awesome. We were like, whoa, never experienced this level of earning, of business, but then all of the work that comes with it, right? All of the energy work that comes with it, all of the needing to ground and regulate because I'm taking in so many stories, so much energy, so much trauma with these clients that are being vulnerable and opening themselves up to me. And it burned me out. I entered this year extremely well burnt out mentally, but then it affected my physical health. And then I was really attached to this. You book this session, we meet, and then this is the trade off, this is the exchange, and this is how the business is conducted. But because of how quickly everything scaled, there was never enough time in the day. I had no time to start new projects, to make new content. It was just this never ending game of catch up, and the burnout continued. And then I kind of was so stressed and burnt out from it that I don't want to say I ghosted my clients, but there was a probably like 6 months of this year where I really just didn't do any one-on-one work because I think my nervous system was so unregulated and like in shock from it that the responsibility or the extra pressure just, it was like the breaking point for me. And so I spent a lot of money on coaching and programs to kind of help me build a strategy or figure out how to automate my business or shift into digital courses and that kind of realm of work. And there's a lot of identity work that I've had to do to kind of get to that point and feel comfortable in that space. And so I started with this new container that I launched. I was doing a lot of like audio recording readings, which were very quick. It was fast. It was easy. It was easier than being on a Zoom session with a client. But then still, there were so many of them that it was not enough time in a day. So I condensed that into a very personal, intimate container where my clients that, especially the ones that have worked with me for so long, they can have access to me directly. They'll get personally curated readings for each month of the new year. And as we move through 2026, and it was just kind of a way to repurpose the work I was doing on an individual scale in a more intimate container where I can still do the great work and deliver it and even enhance it, but it wasn't stretching me so thin. So that's kind of the next step that I started, and now I'm moving into kind of enhancing that and building on the strategy and the plans that I have for the new year. Because 2026, we're just like running through it and hitting the ground hard. But it's taken so long to get to that point. I was working two full-time jobs and just really trying to work to survive and always in survival mode, always in catch up. It's never enough, no matter what. And my time was always connected to the hour. And so breaking out of that and breaking into a mindset or a mentality that could earn while I'm not sitting face to face with someone was just so foreign to me. So it's been a really long year of trying to work through the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, and this weird feeling of this isn't enough for people. I'm not giving enough, but I'm like slowly feeling more and more confident. This container, especially that I just launched with the membership group, was very weird for me, but I feel like it's the right thing. I already feel more energized with that work instead of having to do 20 million readings this week.
That's such a massive transition to go from a handful of clients to 1,000. And
Yeah.
I am curious because what I often see with entrepreneurs, especially spiritual entrepreneurs who are doing some sort of practice or service-based work, is that that shift often mirrors something inside of us. And I'm curious, like when that changed, did something change inside of you that kind of brought on that big wave, or did it just seem completely out of the blue?
Yeah, I go through in my own journey, I go through these periods of like immense stagnation and like resistance. I've noticed just with whatever I do, where for a long time it's just pulling teeth from a newborn. For some reason, I am so reluctant to shift or to pivot or to change. And then I fall into this void a little bit. And I've found, especially with this year, the longer the time in the void, the bigger the breakthrough. But I go through these moments where I have to just kind of fall apart and disconnect from everything going on. And it gets really messy, it gets really loud, it gets really intense. And then I reach this realization, this like aha moment of, oh my God, like this is what I need to do. I was watching one of your podcast episodes where you were mentioning not really living in the world of using the language like quantum leaps. Like I also kind of live in that space where I'm like, I don't really embrace the narrative of everything shifts now, tomorrow, or in this moment. It's very much there's this lull and this huge period of just confusion, disconnection, and pressure and resistance. And then all of a sudden it just breaks through and the floodgate opens and then there's a new idea. And I really feel like at this point, in my journey, having seen it so many times in my life, it's just me getting out of my own way. All of the mindset, identity, imposter syndrome, yuckiness that weighs and stacks and follows you no matter where you're going. My friend Whitney Yulin said this to me once, and it changed my life. She said, "Different levels, same devils." And I've never forgotten when
Mm.
she said that to me because it's so true. Like you leave your 9 to 5, but then you start the business, but the same mentalities that you have around your identity or how you work, they really follow you. They look completely different. The type of work you're doing is different. And then all of a sudden you realize you've been self-sabotaging or playing it way too small for too long. And then for me, it's normally I have that realization and then I'm sick of myself. And I can't believe I was thinking this. And I'm like, get over yourself, just do it. And then I do it. And then everything, then it shifts. Then the leap happens.
Yeah, it's so cool to recognize that pattern within yourself. And the different levels, same devils thing is so real. I just stumbled on something like that for myself because my background obviously is in brand and marketing. But I found recently, I'm like, I need to break my own rules. I've been steeped in marketing and brand work for so long that I've realized I've almost chained myself to how things should operate. And I'm
Yeah.
really trying to shift out of that and into more of my intuition. And, how do I market from a place that just feels really good and may not have a strategy
Yeah.
or like a schedule attached to it?
It's so challenging to do that because it goes against any of the comfort that we find as an entrepreneur of any kind. There is very little comfort in the process of implementing change in any way with what you're doing because there's no rule book, there's no this is how you run your business and how you figure it out. You can really just take what you've learned, and that's kind of the lens we tend to live in. And so it is really hard to dismantle the entire foundation at which you're like operating from. It is like no matter what you're doing, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, completely. And I want to switch gears a little bit. It is related, but I find that there is this kind of age old challenge with people of all types, whether they own a business or not, but intuition versus anxiety. And how do you tell the difference between the two? And I think this comes up
Yeah.
all the time. And I'm curious, how do you distinguish one from the other?
Absolutely. And I actually get asked that question all the time. Like at least once a week we have this conversation and it's so real. Like so many
Yeah.
people struggle with anxiety. I know I myself included. And a big part of my journey was relying on intuition, especially as a child into my adolescence. It was kind of like the only thing I had, and I was very much immersed in the spirit world. That was my only safe space. So my intuition was something I trusted for so long. And then as a young adult, you're told to do the exact opposite of trust your intuition. And it creates a lot of conflict because we live in such an intellectually ruled world. You're just kind of required to blindly follow the steps and the systems that were laid before us. And for a lot of us, that didn't even work anyways. And so it causes a huge, almost even an identity clash for me, especially because I find myself even questioning my own intuition doing what I do now. And so many people are like, your intuition is so strong, but anyone can get closer to that. You just have to get really good at discerning. And so when it comes to the clash between the intellect and our intuition or anxiety, I tend to come back to my body. And as someone who has a journey and a history of being very disconnected from their body, dissociating is like my number one space to be. I was never safe in my body, so I always wanted to not feel and just push it aside. For me, I look to my body now, and this is what I encourage everyone to do when it comes to this. Feel it. Where is it coming from? For me, when I know it's anxiety, it's up in the up, like in my head, it'll be in the back or the front of my head or like in the back of my neck, and it's typically like a buzzing, like a static. But when it's intuition, it's in the solar plexus at the core, very far away from the mind. And so that's kind of my compass for telling the difference between the two. And you just really have to get comfortable with feeling in general. And then from there, it gets easier to cut through the noise or the static to determine which one is which.
Yeah, I completely get that. And when I started doing work to connect my head and my body, because I was so up here, like especially in my career, it's like I was living in my head. I was living actually like 5 feet in front of my body. I wasn't even in my body. So I
Totally.
totally resonate. And once I did this like big Vipassana meditation retreat and really started to connect things and come back to the present, my intuition began to turn on. And I think something that you said that I want to highlight too, that I think most people don't realize about people who bring their intuition into their work, which is like we are just like everyone else. We're not intuitively turned on from sun up to sundown. And we also have different periods where anxiety comes up, where we're burnt out and we need to come back. So I just felt called to kind of share that too. And I'm curious if there's any other kind of unexpected things about running a spiritual business that you think listeners should know.
Oh man, unexpected things. Be prepared for every limitation that you've overcome to find you again. Again, it's like the different levels, same devil's thing. Like I found so much, especially in this year, so much of my journey and healing and identity work has come full circle and being in the driver's seat and having full autonomy to make choices or decisions to start a podcast or to start a new container, all these things. And that can be really heavy when you've never had the control or the permission to just branch out and be. So there is an unexpected level of sometimes I think I come from a place where I'm like, I have to do this next, or I have it, but it's like I get to do it. Like it gets to be different. It gets to be this fun thing. I don't have to do anything, but the level of option or the level of permission that I'm being granted, that can feel almost scary. Not like too good to be true, but almost there's like this pressure to do it all or to do more, to do it better. And I just think be expected to have so many options, but be expected to embrace them, to give yourself permission to do them regardless of what your brain is telling you, regardless of what you've known up until this point. And I feel a lot of people are starting to enter the spiritual or business side of life anyways. I'm seeing more and more, even my own clients starting their own spiritual practices, lots of Reiki healing coming up. Now I'm seeing more healers than ever, which I love. And I think we're headed in that direction and we need it more than ever. But you have to be ready to also make the leap, right? Like not the quantum leap, but the decision leap. Like I get to do this. I get the permission to do all of it or any of it. So
Mm-hmm.
that can be kind of daunting.
Saying I can do this. And I know I struggled with that. I had a Reiki healing business several years ago, and it was so scary for me to tell people in my life, like, yeah, I'm actually like highly intuitive and do this weird thing called Reiki. And you probably have no idea what it is, but let me practice on you.
Yeah, right. And people are like, what the heck? My own family doesn't understand anything about what I do. And you know what? Another thing to prepare yourself for is you don't have to explain it. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to explain it to people who aren't willing or ready to understand it in general. You get to just do it. If it's your calling, answer.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that brings up inner work too of being comfortable with that. Not everyone might accept what you do or like what you do or believe in it. And some relationships may fall away. Some relationships just may include that fact in it, right? Like I have certain friends that aren't spiritual, but we're still friends. And
Yeah.
it's just this thing of like, okay, this is different between us.
In the same way, it's like I don't have to be a doctor to be friends with a doctor. I don't have to understand the science of that entire industry to connect with someone over it. They don't need to understand Reiki healing to connect with you, right? You don't need them to get it or to approve of it. Some of the closest people to you, when you become a spiritual business owner or creator of any kind, some of the closest people to you will not understand, and they will be the ones that understand the least with what you're doing. I learned that firsthand in the last 2 years since I started doing social media and I started a business. I've seen a huge shift in my social circle and connections, and that's okay. You really do. I don't want to say you outgrow people, but the spheres, the hemispheres of connection change as you also change, but that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one other thing I would add to this too is that I feel like spirituality, like I'm constantly evolving in my spiritual journey. I just
Yeah.
started to learn tarot just for fun, like pulling, one card in the morning with my typical oracle card, and that's been something so new and fun to explore. And I think it's you're constantly evolving even in this lane.
Yeah, absolutely. And if your spiritual perspective isn't evolving, honestly, I'm shocked. We should be growing, right? We should, I don't want to say changing, but our philosophy should always be building. There is really no limit on when you stop learning or when you stop growing in any modality either. Like anyone that I got the certification in astrology or whatever it is, and now, that's the end all be all. I'm like, no, even now when I meet with clients, I'm still learning. Every time I read a chart, I find something new or learn something about how I do this thing, or I read a new book and it's the level of perspective has helped add to my own, right? Your spiritual perspective should be growing at the same rate you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, has your spiritual perspective, I guess, changed recently, or are you exploring new tools? Where are you at now?
Yeah, I think to this question actually really connects me to so much of this year, so much of what I mentioned with starting a membership group, leaning into new projects and things for the new year. For me, I've gotten to this point in my spirituality, or at least in my own philosophy, that because for so long I struggled to integrate information about, I've read so many, but like I'm such a big reader. So I read like everything from The Secret to Gabby Bernstein and like all of these really great authors, and everyone's take, especially for manifesting or law of attraction, is so different. And astrology is also very similar for any astrology learner or fan. The way someone delivers information regarding signs can be so polarized compared to someone else. And so I've reached this point where I don't know if there is a single answer to how we relay this information or how we process anything, whether it's human design, manifesting, astrology. But for me, in this point, especially this year, where I found the magic, right? All of this, whatever this is, the spiritual energy, the energetics, the whatever you want to call it, you universally use whatever term you want. It has to be up to you. It has to be what you make of it. My process for manifesting or my course in manifesting may not be the answer for someone who just isn't clicking with it. My map isn't going to bring you to your destination, essentially. So for me, I've reached this point where instead of forcing a right or wrong, a yes or no sort of narrative with spirituality or any modality, it's really what you make of it. So, how do you take the information from all of the books you read or all of the different takes that you're hearing about the astrology of November or whatever, and how do you apply that in a way that builds meaning for you? How do you create your own system to follow so that you can follow your own map to the X that marks the spot for you? My way isn't going to be someone else's way. And I don't want to ever expect that from anybody too, because I've definitely tried to bypass and force the just believe, in the thing and it'll manifest. And that definitely didn't work for someone with my experiences, with my traumas. Like, I can't do that. So I have to build my own way to interpret it and to reach my result.
It's so important. And I think it brings up this thing too, which I'm curious your perspective because you do have such a large platform, you work with so many people, is that sometimes people do, I think, outsource their intuition almost, and they almost put too much dependence. They're depending on kind of outside sources rather than within.
It's very much like there is, especially in with spiritual content and social media, there is kind of this echo chamber of information that we're expected to just blindly follow. An example that I would use is like detachment or surrender. We hear that term all the time, and a lot of clients of mine personally have been, I know I just need to detach and surrender and then it'll happen. And I'm like, this isn't really the work though. Yeah, you've been told that a million times and you've seen a million videos telling you just detach and the thing will happen, right? And then it never does. And then you feel even more disconnected. You feel more anxious and it just builds and builds and builds. The pressure is just getting worse because you're being told all these things, but then they're not working for you. What I find is that we're kind of treating it like a checklist. I meditated and I visualized and now I detach and surrender and now the thing comes, but really there's inner work, there's limiting beliefs, there's a whole body that needs connecting to and feeling and understanding, and a lot of the external is preventing us from looking at ourselves or looking in the mirror and being like, oh, I actually do this thing and I'm not regulated. I'll use myself as an example. For so long, when it came to income, I was trying to manifest a certain income in my business and I was never reaching it, no matter how much I journaled or scripted or visualized. And the reality was my nervous system wasn't ready to receive that. It wasn't suitable or a match to understand what it's like to hold that level of income or to hold that responsibility and what I needed to exchange to receive it. And so being told to do all of these things almost made it worse because I was showing up and doing them, but not actually doing the right work.
What you said before, it's like coming back to the present, coming back to your body. What's the truth there? And then, like, yes, sometimes getting a reading, getting input is really helpful. It can help us connect. But even if we're getting a reading, even if we're digesting information, balancing that with, okay, does this resonate? Does this feel like it's sinking in? And then I think the
Yeah.
second part to what you're saying too is that the world likes to tell us how we should grow and how we should build and do things, but we need to check in with ourselves. And I'm glad you said that because I did want to touch on 2026 briefly. A lot of people are saying there's all these huge signs changing from the outside. We are maybe, moving from Pisces energy to Aries energy. And I'm curious your take on, the next year.
Yeah, it's going to be way different than what we experienced this year. There's a there's a lot going around on social media regarding the astrology in particular. The numerology, we're entering a 1 year, which is all about initiation. There's kind of an energy. It's very flammable. It's very much like a spark and igniting something, right? And I've personally traced this kind of year in my own life, and they can look one or two ways. It's either going to be 0 to 100 right away, Or depending on kind of where we're sitting in our belief system, it becomes this like, I'm sitting on the fence waiting for the thing to happen. And then if you're waiting, I am a firm believer you're always waiting. Get the ball rolling. It's really about getting started. The astrology, there's a lot of fear right now regarding next year. There's going to be a lot of outer planets transiting into new signs. We'll see Neptune moves into Aries in the end of January. So that's huge. We'll have Uranus moving into Gemini full time in like April. Saturn moves into Aries full time in February. And then all of this at the same time, we'll have eclipses in the Aquarius and Leo axes. So very much age of Aquarius energy. There's Pluto and Aquarius. Like we have so many huge, very, very pinnacle transits happening. And when you look at, because astrology can really be a multitude of different things. We can use it to trace events in history. We can use it to look back on when these planets were where they're going to be, what was happening in the past during this time. And if you do that, which I totally recommend, and I won't go down that rabbit hole, but if you do that, you will see some things that are a little alarming, especially when it comes to war and just all sorts of political stances with the astrology. But at the same time, you can use it on an individual level as well. And while we're not in control of governments and all sorts of crazy things that are happening in the world that may happen during this time, we are in control of ourselves. And so we can still, on an individual level, use this information accordingly. And I think we walk a fine line with applying astrology to what's coming up. I really steer clear of talking about my predictions, I guess, with the astrology, where we could say the last time we saw all of these outer planets where they're at, we saw the Civil War, we saw both world wars, we saw the American Revolution. Like we could go down that road, but a lot of the time that just inspires more anxiety and worry and fear. And I've also found that when we lean in that way, we kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if someone's telling you it's just going to be doom, hardship, and despair, it's probably going to be a lot easier for you to find that than the latter when you've also known that maybe in your journey with trauma and healing. So for me, while it's going to be intense, there's always a moment to make from what's going on. And so it's really just about being present with your own energy, your own work, and also with what's currently transiting and going on. I do think that next year really marks a pinnacle moment for entrepreneurs and creators. And I mentioned earlier that the Pluto and Aquarius era that we're in is really going to be this very rewarding time for, as scary and as much as we can lean into, oh, the French and American Revolution happened with Pluto and Aquarius. Well, we can also see this as an opening for really, really heart led individuals, creators. Aquarius is kind of known for being this rebel, loner, outcast, the one on the outside, not really a part of the system. And really, I feel like that's anyone that's a spiritual or creative individual. These people are going to be needed more than ever because as much as Aquarius is on the outside, they are a leader and they lead by bringing people together. So bringing people together through your platforms, your communities, the work that you do, creating positive change and reform in the world around you, that is going to be the currency of this next year, especially. And I think a lot of it kickstarts as we move into the new year. So I'm excited. My 7 Aquarius placements are ready. Like I'm ready to break into the stratosphere, but this will be about less performative, less performing, less showing up because I have to or I need to look a certain way, and more, this is who I am, this is my purpose, this is my message, and together we can create a lot of positive change. So that's the direction, and that's what we do even as the spiritual CEOs that we are. We have a purpose. We're heart-led, most of us, I would say. So it is really kind of in our DNA for us to be the leaders in this next chapter. It's just going to be about fully giving ourselves the permission to show up as we are, not as we think we should be, but just as we are.
Yeah, permission to show up, permission to show more of your heart, more of your passion. And I think,
Yeah.
gosh, yeah, it's so important.
Yeah. And I really live in the lens of, someone said this to me once. One of my clients said that joy shared is joy amplified. And that was like something that like changed my brain chemistry. And it's like when you come from that intention of like providing value, that was always like an intention in the content I created and the work that I do. Like I want to give something that is meaningful, that is helping someone find something within themselves. Because I can't change your life for you. I can't manifest your life for you. If I could, I would. But since I can't, I can at least provide value in a way that helps you find the answer, that helps you create that for yourself, right? And that's really the core of the work that we do. So that's kind of my anchor, like my North Star. And when you come from that place, you not only change someone else's life, but it changes your life too, and it enhances all of your experiences.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could cry right now. I'm feeling so inspired.
Yes, we want that inspiration, and that's the energy to follow into the new year too. I mean, it sounds like a lot, like, I mean, there's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be a lot that's not in our control, but there's also a lot that is in our control, and that's what we should be focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we fully wrap up, I want to like leave space for any other thoughts that you want to share, anything that comes through.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I feel like now I'm being given permission. What do I want to share? I don't know. I think if there's anything I could leave this conversation with, it would be that, anyone listening or anyone who is feeling called to make a difference, to share their story, whatever that story is, or whatever the difference is, just be brave, be yourself, have the courage. And you don't have to perform, you don't have to be like everybody else. We don't want that. We want real, genuine people that help us find ourselves and help us feel like we're not alone. And I think in an age and era where AI is kind of so relevant and taking over, like, one thing it can never do is replace human connection. So embrace that, and everything we've talked about and where we're going and what's coming next. Just the more you are yourself, the more you embrace yourself, and the message and the story that you have to offer, the more clarity is going to come to your journey. So just follow that.
Yeah, yeah. That's so good. Amen.
Yeah.
And our final question that we ask all guests, do you have a confession that you'd like to share with our listeners? It could be personal or work related.
I do have a confession. It's for those who have probably seen me like presently speak about this. It won't really be a confession, but for those who have no idea who I am, this is a confession, and this is kind of the perfect, I think, time and place to confess. I have been feeling so called in my own journey to make impact in a different way, and one of those ways was to lean into podcasting. So my confession is that in the new year, I am launching my own podcast, which I would love to have you on, by the way. I want to channel my own mind, my own thoughts into that space. But if I did have a confession too regarding that, I have had major imposter syndrome about that. I was so nervous about today to like just like showing up and having that freedom, that permission to speak and be vulnerable. So it's a scary thing for me. Like, I vulnerability is like not my comfort zone. That's taken a lot of time to work through and work on. So yeah, that's my confession. I'm moving into the podcasting space, but it has been very difficult for me to embrace that level of identity and confidence.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. It's so
Thank you.
exciting.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited too. I think I can talk forever, and I love to talk, but it's been a very different journey to get to this point. So to guide the conversation, to have a structure, that's all new for me. So I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah. I think you're going to be amazing at it. Well, Casey, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I'm so grateful to be here. So thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
I loved this conversation with Casey. And what I keep coming back to is this idea that intuition is not opting out of responsibility or consistency. It's about knowing when to push, when to pause, or when to stay the course, even when it's uncomfortable. That distinction between intuition and anxiety, especially in business, is one that I don't think we talk about enough. And so I loved getting Casey's perspective on that and this reminder to stay in our bodies. If this conversation resonated, I invite you to take a look at where might you be outsourcing your self-trust? Or on the flip side, where might you be avoiding things and calling it intuition or giving it a label to give yourself an excuse, right? How can you come back to that truth inside of you and explore that nuance here? Because I think within that nuance is where leadership is waiting for you. So you can find Casey's work linked in the show notes below. If you want to explore more of his platform and offerings, I encourage you to do so. He is such a light. And if you're enjoying these conversations, it would mean the world if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share this conversation with a friend, especially if they have a business and they're navigating different seasons of rest and growth right now. As always, thank you for being here. I am your host, Samantha Fackler, and I will catch you next time.